Hello, joining us today from Sorting Robotics is Nohtal Partansky, an aerospace engineer who transitioned into an innovative role within the cannabis manufacturing sector. With a comprehensive background in aerospace technology, Nohtal brings a unique perspective to the development of automated solutions in a growing industry. Thank you for joining us today, Nohtal.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, I'm glad to be here.
Great. So, can you share your journey from aerospace engineering to automating cannabis production? Like, what inspired the transition?
So the transition wasn't one to one, I guess I would say, because that would be kind of a lot. I was working at NASA's JPL here in Pasadena, and I worked on the uh, Perseverance rover project called MOXIE, which was a device that is currently producing oxygen on the surface of Mars out of the atmosphere of Mars. So I worked on that for a few years, and towards the end of it, I really wanted to start my own company. And I wanted to start a robotics company, and I didn't really know kind of what was the best path forward. And so when starting this company, I started it in a completely different industry, not cannabis at all. Because you can imagine it would be a little bit dicey to start a, federally illegal industry while I'm working at a federal facility. And so I didn't actually start in the cannabis industry. I started building a device called the Roca sorter, which was a robotic card sorting system that sorted Magic the Gathering cards and Pokemon cards and trading cards for online and e-commerce sellers. And so I did that in 2018. And then in 2019, once we went full time, me and my co-founders, we noticed that that market was kind of small. We weren't going to be able to grow it to be, a 50 or $100 million top line company. So we need to find another industry. And then we got into something called Y Combinator, which is a startup accelerator in Silicon Valley. And and that's really where we found the, kind of path forward with cannabis. And at this time we were already full time. We were working on the company for almost 2 years. And so then we pivoted the company into the cannabis industry and kind of went completely focused on cannabis in 2020. So started in 2018, different industry, pivoted the company, went into cannabis, and we actually sold the first part of the company, the Roca sorter, and it got sold a couple times, and now it's actually owned by eBay, and they use that platform to do their trading card division order fulfillment. So that was kind of the first part of the company, and that's the path. It wasn't quite working at NASA and then slinging weed robots. It was there was a few steps in between.
Well, that makes sense. So, what fundamental engineering principles from aerospace did you find applicable to the design of automated systems in this cannabis industry or in the cannabis manufacturing? But maybe you could also talk about the stepping stones along the way with the card sorter as well.
Let's see. So aerospace specifically, I would say is probably the most precise of all the physical engineering disciplines. And so if we look at kind of those concepts that are in aerospace engineering, I would say that is the framework in which I use and my engineers use to solve problems, as opposed to, civil or straight mechanical engineers. They might be less precise because that's the domain in which they were trained in. And for aerospace engineering, you have to be extremely precise and have a pretty wide range of knowledge. And I think that background has helped significantly when building any of the products that we have in the cannabis industry.
How do you define the key differences in regulatory requirements? I'm sure they're very different from the aerospace industry to the cannabis sector when it comes to implementing new technology.
So this is a very kind of interesting topic, and mostly it's interesting because aerospace, and especially where I was at, is guided by something called ITAR, and that ITAR regulatory kind of framework is made so that we're not giving missile technology to China, right? And we kind of keep that in terms of like national security. In the regulatory space for cannabis, it's very different. It's more making sure that there's track and trace, that the products that are being created are safe for people. So the motivations behind the regulatory framework are very different. So they're implemented very differently as well. One is like don't give away national secrets. The other is like make sure people are safe. And so the good thing about the second one is that robots actually make people more safe, especially when you're manufacturing anything, because you don't have as much contamination and you don't have to worry about as much variability, so people are getting dosed correctly. And then when you look at the different states and their different regulations, they don't really affect how the machine is designed, but they do affect how the machine is used. So there are some states that we just don't even sell into, like Pennsylvania, for example. We have zero footprint there because up until I think like last year, they didn't sell cannabis pre-rolls. Like it was like all vaporizers and flour, but they like wouldn't sell pre-rolls. And then now I think they're selling pre-rolls, but they can't be infused. And most of the things that we sell are infused, like machines that make infused pre-rolls. They're kind of like going the way of Ohio, which was very similar, but like now Ohio is selling infused. And then take that in contrast with a state like California, where since day one, you could make any product under the sun as long as you tested it. And so in that situation, and Michigan was like that as well, or is like that as well. In that situation, those industries or those like markets become much more, positively focused towards the technology that we bring them because it can make them more stable and save them money and make them more compliant than less compliant.
What have you learned from designing automated systems for cannabis that you didn't already know from the aerospace industry?
I think it's not so much what did I learn about like automated systems, I guess, because I kind of knew how to build, or I guess I knew the foundational knowledge for building robotics. But I think what really changed was the fact that before I was building things for scientists and now I'm building things for manufacturing workers. And the different interface has been a big change. And I mean, now I'm used to it. But then when I bring on new engineers, I like to hire from the aerospace industry because that's kind of what I know. And then also, like, they're at that top tier of precision. And so when they come from aerospace and they come to here, they're like, oh, but the operators will just do this. Like, no, no, they're not gonna do that. Then they're like, why? But that's just like, no, like they're not engineers. They're not like you. They're there to do a task and they might have a team lead that may be a little bit more sophisticated in like troubleshooting and stuff. But it's really about learning how to make the machines so simple to use that they're like iPhones, right? You're talking $250,000 robotic systems that are as easy to use as playing Candy Crush. That has been a very interesting challenge to kind of make sure to have it yield the performance that the customers require, but still have it be able to be operated by the level of sophistication of the manufacturing workers in the cannabis industry.
Gotcha. So at your company then, you're no longer in the card sorting business. Are you only doing cannabis and do you only have those two machines?
Yeah, our main product lines are the Jico robot and Stardust. We've also launched a few other ones like the biomass sortation system called Eli. We made like a ERP system for trimming for more on the cultivation side. And then we also made like a very high efficiency pharmaceutical grade vape cartridge filling system and deployed that to a few customers. But at the moment, we're almost entirely focused on those two products because the other products are either too early for the market or um, they just require a lot more infrastructure that we don't want to focus on. I would say the biomass sorting and the vape cart filling, they're made for, huge companies. And so when we try to sell those, we sold a few of them, but to the very biggest companies, and the cannabis market's just like not there yet, right? Maybe in like 5 or 10 years when the scale is really there, you have federal legalization, so you have like mega farms as opposed to a bunch of like little kind of craft breweries, which is basically what the whole market is built up of. Those things will become much more prevalent there. And there's kind of a few people that like need that volume, but at the moment we're focusing more on satisfying the large bulk of the market, which is like this manufacturing, and especially in the fastest growing market, which is cannabis pre-rolls.